Welcome back to Archaeology After Dark, everyone. I am, of course, your host, Daniel Rhodes. My guest is Lexi Henning. Lexi, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on today.
So, we had a few technical issues getting into this episode. We are 100% professional and on track, but it kind of goes along with what today's topic is archaeogaming. So, archaeology, technology, gaming, it all goes together. It's been a while since we've talked about Archaeogaming as a concept, and I thought it would be really great to revisit it because it's something that people are talking more about and actually turning into a field of study. So, Lexi, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, the first thing I want to do for your audience is just clear up. So there is a technical, it's pretty small, but at this point, but there is a technical difference between pure archaeogaming and then historical games research. So I kind of am at the intersection of that, and I would say my current research is actually more toward just historical game studies. But I got into archaeogaming in 2020 over the pandemic. And it was basically because, like everybody, I was kind of sitting at home and was bored, but then got a PlayStation and someone was like, you should spend a ton of hours in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And I said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Let me do that. And then I just sort of noticed as I was kind of running around that they had included a lot of real like archaeological info into the game. Of course, there's a lot of inaccuracies still, but I just remember being really impressed with it. And then it made me curious, and I went, "Oh, I wonder if anyone has written about this or done something on it." So I did a little bit of research, and of course, a lot of people, as it turns out, have written on it. Um, but I would say I had a kind of crash course introduction to the whole subject. So I learned very quickly that there is kind of a book that sort of established archaeogaming as its own subfield of archaeology. And that book is literally just called Archaeogaming by Andrew Reinhard, who's kind of the guy who coined the term I think it was a 2013 blog post or something like that. So he's kind of the granddaddy of the subject. So, um, I mean, that's really how I got into it. But it's, as I like to say, it's just looking at the archaeology in and of video games. So whether it's archaeology in the game, if you have a mythological game, awesome. But also, Andrew talks a lot about how it can also be looking at a physical video game as an object, as an archaeological object itself. And I know he's done a lot of work on sort of all types of games, board games, old systems, and looking at kind of their unique place in our culture. So, um, yeah, that's really what it's about. And so I just kind of fell into it because I thought it was a fun thing to look at. And it's, something digital. So I don't need to go into an archive um, to get special permissions. It's something I can do from the comfort of my home on my couch.
I mean, as archaeologists, that's what we strive for is to do it from the comforts of our own home. But as many of you know, during the pandemic, you can't exactly dig shovel tests in your living room. Believe me, I tried, and it annoyed my parents to no end, among other things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there was like I was looking at Amazon at one point and I saw there was like a little do-it-yourself archaeology kit and I was like, "Oh, well maybe I'll just buy it so I can pretend to sort of do stuff at home." But it was like ordering sand and something. So I was like, I refuse to pay the price to ship myself like a box of sand and like a little shovel. So didn't do it.
Oh my God. During the pandemic, you could have just like reached out to people in like different parts of the world, but like, so can you send me some of your sand?
It would have been a really cool experiment. I would have seen if I could get sand from like Greece and Italy, some sand from Sweden. Like it would have been kind of insane to try to collect it. But yeah, I unfortunately didn't capitalize on that, so that didn't happen.
So, for those of you who are fans of the show, in the first year or two of the program, I actually had Andrew Reinhardt on the show, and it was a really interesting topic, really interesting discussion. How people view like collectibles in video games, like especially if it's like an open world game, people going and like it kind of scratches the itch of an archaeologist where you actually go in the game and just collect things and then you get this wonderful little thing saying you collected all the things, yay you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but even more than that, you have really great games that have come out in the last several years. I'm not sure if any of your listeners are going to be familiar with it. I mean, I feel like a lot of people at this point kind of are, but it's Heaven's Vault, where you play as an archaeologist. You're the protagonist is Aaliyah Alazra, and she's kind of it's a weird kind of game because it's like a mashup of kind of real life archaeology, but also there is like a sort of sci-fi element to it. But essentially, the core gameplay is that you get to translate the ancient texts, and you basically go around and kind of look at context clues, and then you have to sort of translate this ancient language from this ancient civilization that was there. So I really like that game because it teaches you how to kind of do real tasks, and it's not this sort of Indiana Jonesified idea of you just go around and loot tombs all the time, which I really hate.
Yeah, I recently disappointed a group of school children when I told them I don't actually carry a gun or a taser when I go out doing field work. And I've never actually seen a group of children be disappointed listening to me talk about archaeology. But I'm like, okay, you guys understand that it's okay that I don't shoot people and people don't shoot me. It's fine for video games because the bullets aren't, actively hitting me, but I don't go out and, actively look for people to shoot at me whilst recovering priceless historical artifacts.
Yeah, I honestly feel bad kind of like having to tell kids when they get curious and ask about what archaeologists and historians actually do. And I think, there's like a funny meme that went around a year or two ago that was like, if people named Indiana Jones films with names of like things that archaeologists actually do, they would sound like the most boring films of all time. I think it was like there was one I think I saw that was like Indiana Jones and the quest for receiving permissions to go dig in X location, or it was like Indiana Jones and the quest for that one pot shard that is elusive and lost in the museum, and people were like, "Oh my God, that sounds terribly boring." And I went, "Yeah, well, welcome to real archaeology."
My favorite is Indiana Jones and the unfiled travel payment or something like that. Like he was trying to get reimbursed for going somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're just so silly and ridiculous. But so, you see that, and then you see, oh, well, that's why the Indiana Jones films like actually have those exciting names that Hollywood gave it, because otherwise it really just, there's nothing snappy about it.
Yeah. But, going back to Archaeogaming, this does kind of the same things in video games, like, especially games like Tomb Raider and things like that, that kind of mystify archaeology. Like people are like, oh, this is what archaeology actually is. Well, it isn't. Lara Croft doesn't do paperwork.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it's really hard, and I think my personal opinion has changed a lot just because I do have a lot of friends working in the game industry. So when I talk to them about it, a lot of times I get the other side of the story, which is pretty significant, I think, which is, for budget reasons, for other reasons, games are made to entertain. And so there has to be some level of, not quite sort of surrealism. And while that's very disappointing to a lot of real archaeologists, like it makes sense. I mean, I guess there are some games that kind of maybe hint at things or carry out archaeology plots a bit better than others. And then there's some games like I think House of Ashes, which came out in I want to say 20 maybe 2019, something like that. Um, they basically just used it as a cover for a whole alien sci-fi plot. So I think it took place in That game takes place, I think, in 2001 in like Iraq or something, and then it's a fight between Iraqi and U.S. soldiers playing off the Iraq War, and then you basically have the like an earthquake come, it shakes everybody up. They fall into an old Akkadian temple, and then suddenly the game turns into like you're recreating the Curse of Akkad, and you're literally walking around finding, you know, the old tents and setups of archaeologists. And so in the game you get to go and it is kind of cool because you get to pick up like in-game artifacts are like tools and equipment from a real archaeological dig. So it is kind of cool that you get to see it in situ, even in this ridiculous horror game. Um, but you know what? I kind of think that it makes it really fun because you'll see real artifacts, you'll see how they're preserved, you'll see real journalists, sort of like journals and notes, and I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, and it's like a weird troll on the field of archaeology because I've never met someone who hasn't lost a trowel at some point in the field, and like actively being in a video game where you find somebody's lost trowel. I'm like, oh my God, so many people would relate to this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, and it comes down to even other just things like I think you come across like someone's abandoned water canteen and you're like, "Oh, I wonder, did someone misplace this and then just not go back to their trench and find it later?" Like it's just really funny to see how they sort of creatively put different aspects of archaeology within video games because it's everything from, you know, the tasks and the job of an archaeologist to just the physical materials that one would use if they're in that profession. And then yeah, just kind of creatively finding ways to put that into games, I think is really cool. And then it really turns the game into a learning tool.
Yeah, and then they, have to create an environment around these tools. Like, all right, so I've followed you on Instagram for a little while. I've seen some takes you've made on The Last of Us, which I thought was great, and it's a really good like cultural study. Like, how does culture keep going after, something cataclysmic happens and there are still remnants of stuff that's left over? Like, Joel will have like a hot take on a movie poster that's like 30 years old. He's like, "Yeah, this
Yeah,
movie was in
absolutely.
theaters and it was garbage."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love it. I mean, and I love how, I mean, I love The Last of Us for so many reasons. Obviously, my PhD work is really looking at narrative more than anything else. But I do definitely have, or plan to have segments talking about the environment and a lot of the in-game collectibles. And so I think one of my favorite sequences, truly, especially in the second game, is when it is kind of like I think it's Ellie's day 3 in Seattle, and she and Jesse are going out, just the two of them. They are going through the old sort of destroyed Seattle Convention Center, and there are like ripped up, very aged, like Comic-Con posters, and they see it, and it's so cute because the dialogue is them trying to figure out like what a con was. So I think Jesse at one point goes, you know, like, or no, I think Ellie starts it off and goes, you know, like, "Oh, what are all these posters?" And he's like, "Looks like a gathering of nerds who like comics, like you." And she's like, "Oh man, that I can't even imagine what that would look like. That's amazing." And then she says something like, "We were born in the wrong time, man." And I just go, "Oh, yes." Like, can you imagine just not knowing what a con is and then trying to recreate this through the posters or whatever else are there? And there's so many other kind of cool insertions like that across the games. But I think one of my favorite parts, honestly, is, and I didn't even have the idea by myself. I'm almost ashamed to admit, not really, because you don't really think of history and archaeology when thinking of post-apocalyptic games. So I guess I can be forgiven for not thinking about it. But my friend Alexander Vandewalla, he co-authored an article with a couple of other Archaeogaming scholars talking about how the act of picking up notes in the world of The Last of Us as you're kind of going along gives you a window. So if you read them, presumably, you are getting a window into and trying to recreate in your mind the scenarios of what happened. And so their articles talk specifically about recreating the ish notes in the sewer in the first game. So when you're kind of going through with Henry, Sam, and Ellie, and then you pick up these notes and you're trying to figure out, okay, well, clearly these people lived here, but why is it empty? And why are we not finding anything? And so it was a really cool thing where I think the article's called What Lasts of Us, Implicit Archaeology in The Last of Us or something like that. It's a great read and I recommend it to anybody. But yeah, it talks about how you as the player, through, of course, your avatar as Joel, are doing archaeology essentially by picking up the artifacts and having to recreate the world in your mind as you're going through. And if you miss things, of course, then you have to do more work to recreate the world. Now, if you find all the artifacts, it basically straight up tells you exactly what happened. But even getting the full story, you're still kind of doing archaeology. And so I think that take just really struck a chord with me. And I went, okay, I have to find more instances of like this. And I found so many for both games. So it's so exciting.
Yeah, we when I did the episode with Andrew Reinhardt, we talked about Horizon Zero Dawn, I think was the game we kept coming back to. How one of the things you have to collect in the game is like old corporation like swag mugs from like conferences and conventions, and your character in the game is like, so what do you think people use this for? She's like, I think people might have like drank out of them, and the guy following you around, he's like, no, that's just ridiculous, and you're ridiculous for thinking that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many games that I mean, and that's the thing. It's just like it's so well done because picking up and interacting with artifacts and the world is such a unique, special thing that most games allow you to do in some way. And so to be able to find different games in different ways for players to kind of recreate scenarios, worlds, narratives, and thereby sort of do archaeology, I think is it's something that's unique to games, basically, and that's why it makes that ability makes games one of my favorite digital media to work with because obviously you can't do that in film and TV.
No, you can't, reach into a movie and touch the artifacts. They frown on that. I would assume. I've never actually tried to do that.
Me neither.
It's like visiting a Hard Rock cafe and you see like John Travolta's jacket from Grease. Like, yes,
Yeah, yeah.
like wow, John Travolta sweated in that. That's wonderful.
And I'm sure that's I'm sure that's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, you can only get you can sort of, I suppose, if you really wanted to in other media, you could recreate that by, having writing it into the narrative where your character goes over and they pick up these things and they're looking at them. So I suppose if you wanted to write that, you could, but I think just for that medium it would be a little boring to have your TV character spend time going over to, said old bookshelf, picking up a note, and then either reading it out loud or having the camera, show you what's written. That just doesn't work in that medium.
Yeah, and you still don't see characters doing paperwork like are you just have to because no one wants to play a video game where all you do is paperwork.
Exactly. Well, no one wants to play a video game where you see that, but no one wants to watch it either. So, it's kind of like I think games are the closest you'll get to any kind of real simulation of doing any kind of archaeological skills or tasks because, if you were to film that for a TV show, do you want to watch your character just file paperwork for an hour? Like that's so boring. Yeah, that's even more boring than a game, I would argue.
The game makes you write it in triplicate and then actually submit one copy to the state.
Well, at least you'd be able to feel like you sort of interacted with it. I mean, with the controllers these days, you sort of can write with your finger on the keypad or do something a bit more interactive.
What if it actually submitted it to the state?
Well, with where games are going and all these sort of ridiculous microtransactions and other things where you spend real money. I mean, it's kind of incredible. It's kind of insane though. I mean, players have started like whole gig economies just with microtransactions. So I'm kind of like one day if someone was like, I want to put in if you sign something in a game you can really send the digital file to the government or to whatever. I'm sure that someone will invent that and be like, yes, this is great.
That's terrifying.
It is terrifying.
But, it's not all bad because, again, we were talking about Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I did an episode of the show with Kara Cooney, and we talked about Assassin's Creed Origin. And as soon as it came out, like there was a spike in the interest in Egyptology. Like people were like, okay, this is a game, but also the 3D tour of the environments that come along with the game are phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny because I mean, I worked out at UCLA for the last 2 years before I came out to the UK to do my PhD, and so I had the pleasure of working in the same department as Kara, actually. And so, I mean, it's interesting. I've been able to have several conversations with her about games like Origins, and I know that she's not the biggest fan of them because I mean, her whole complaint is they're still wrong. And even the Discovery Tour modes that's supposed to educate people, I know she has many complaints about how that's still wrong. And I get it, but at the same time, it's really hard to recreate sort of whole simulations of the ancient world. And, my argument is I think that, yes, this particular instance is a game, but I think that you can look at using game technology. Like you can use Unreal Engine 5, you can use Unity, and you can create your own sort of, recreated ancient anywhere you want. And so I think that the games are a great starting point to kind of show us what's possible. And so I think, it's really important if more people who want to go into history and archaeology have kind of coding skills. I think, okay, fine, don't complain about either any of the Assassin's Creeds because if you have the skills to code it yourself in Unity or Unreal Engine, I'm like, you could literally make a recreated ancient anything you want and have it be accurate, I suppose, if you wanted to spend the hours. And I do think that that those skills and that kind of stuff will get more popular as we go on. It's just at this current moment, not a lot of people who do history are really good with the tech side. So a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I don't have time. Someone else can do it. But I do think eventually we will have people with the skills to do both. And I know a couple people who have the skills to do both. They just need the time. That's the issue.
But I love that on, Assassin's Creed games now they're like this was made by a multicultural team of experts. And I'm like not hired by Ubisoft to make this game, but I'm one of those people that would be on that team of experts if I had an expertise in anything that went on in Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as someone who kind of knows what happens, so to speak, behind the screen, behind the curtain, just because I've had friends who talk to me about it. It's really interesting because I think it's hard to be one of the consulting experts because for the people who have worked on those games, and I know several, um, like they basically said like yes, they were consulted, yes, they were asked, but at the same time the developers just kind of made what they wanted to make and they brought the historians in after everything was already built, created, and just said, can you just tell if this is like egregiously wrong? And if it's not, then it's good. We're going to ship it like this. So I do think that, the Assassin's Creed model, while helpful, because the consultants I do know, they sort of some were brought in a bit earlier in the process than others. I mean, with Origins, everything was basically done, and I know they invited Kara in to sort of consult at the end, but I mean, she just said that there was nothing she could really say because everything was done. But I know someone who worked on Assassin's Creed Valhalla on the historical team, and they sort of they said it was a bit more collaborative and that they were brought in earlier and could have a bigger say. So they were asked to sort of answer a bunch of questions, and so they kind of then sent in written answers and then gave kind of like a lecture to the game devs as they were in the beginning development process of it. So a little more was made it in, I would say, from the historical side. But again, it's kind of like they were going to make what they were going to make. So, I think to truly have the best of both worlds, and I think that Assassin's Creed is a good starting point. It's a good model, but I think you can go beyond, and I think we can go and do it more collaboratively. You would really need to sort of start with historians and game devs from the very beginning, so you could sort of build a collaborative game together at every point, because I think that it doesn't necessarily work if you just bring people on later. You do have to sort of build together.
Yeah, and I think it's the same way in the cinema industry when, people bring in historical consultants for costumes, especially, and they're brought in at later stages. You actually notice the costumes aren't as accurate as opposed to when like a consultant is brought in like during original designing, like buttons and things, especially on like military uniforms. I've noticed people pointing out, well, the buttons are actually supposed to be on the other side. I'm like, wow, that's very nitpicky, but thank you for the lesson.
Yeah, I mean, and I get the frustration, but again, I think we have to just keep in mind, like anything, it's Hollywood, it's entertainment. Games, they usually get a little more leeway because the development process is 3 to 4 years long, if not more. So, and the expectation is you're going to spend many more hours, and with the characters in that world. So you kind of expect a little more, maybe. I don't know if that's necessarily right, but I would say there's just a different expectation around that, because when you get to Hollywood, we don't really judge games and TV film on the same by the same benchmark, because with TV and film, especially with the current discourse about the new Nolan Odyssey and everything is that everything comes back to that sort of accuracy versus authenticity discussion, but we don't really get that with games, which is really interesting. I don't know if necessarily we like should. I'm very like we do, but I'm kind of glad that it's maybe not to that extent. I've had people sort of say, oh, if we think about Assassin's Creed Odyssey, think about everything that's wrong with it. It's a mashup of different histories and mythologies, because they have to have the myth in there, the sort of sci-fi elements. But then they go to great lengths to say, yeah, but we're including real history in it as well. And I get it. But at the same time, they kind of never shy away from saying, this is basically Ancient Aliens, the video game. So people, the minute they hear that, they just kind of go, great. So I think they prime their audiences through that lens to think, okay, this is a game, and I want to be entertained, and I want to be able to interact with these ancient people that I think would be exciting just as a player to interact with, right? So the fact that Assassin's Creed had like Socrates and Aristophanes and Euripides was in there, and all these like famous Greek people, and you're like, yes, but they didn't all live at the exact same time, and they weren't all basically the same age the way the game shows it. But it's like, yeah, but it's a game, so my expectation is I want to interact with these famous people because that's what I expect from ancient Greece. So we don't really have any kind of accuracy lens there. I think that is really more toward, what the visuals of the game are, which again, very interesting. But that in itself is a whole discussion, though.
No, I wholeheartedly agree with that. The first time I played through Assassin's Creed 3, which takes place during the American Revolution, like one of the background story elements is your character's beef with George Washington, like over the span of the American Revolution. I'm like, he is trying to fight a war. Cut him some slack, really.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's the thing, and that's the thing that I also love about games too, which is I didn't want to become a film and media scholar specifically because I didn't feel like getting weighed down by all these expectations of, yeah, but is it right? What about this or what about that? And I'm like, no, no, no. I like games because they allow us to play in that creative space where you can use elements from history and mythology, but also it's a game. So I want to be entertained. So let me talk to or fight the Minotaur, but then talk to, Sophocles. Let me, help Aristophanes stage a play. Let me talk to Pericles. I don't care. Like I want to be entertained. So give me the things that I want when I expect ancient Greece.
you're going to help Ben Franklin discover electricity that actually happens in the Assassin's Creed game. Like it's like a weird side quest you get sent on. It's like, well, you're not doing anything right now. Benjamin Franklin kind of needs help, so
Yeah,
go
and
do
even
it.
with the DLCs as well, like it allows you to play this sort of quasi, like alternate history. What is it? The DLC for AC3 is like the tyranny of Washington or something. And I'm like, yeah, because he famously became a tyrant and did all these horrible things. But you know what? It'd be fun to imagine. So again, let's just ancient aliens our way into it. And who's crying about accuracy then? No one cares. It's a DLC. It's fun.
It's DLC. You're getting to fight George Washington. Who doesn't want that?
Exactly.
Because he has it coming.
Some people certainly think so.
Oh, oh, that's why I love doing this show because we can make fun of George Washington.
Yes, among many other potential historical figures. Yes.
Well, I mean, it's on topic now because it's the America 250 and people are, bringing in their own interpretations of historical figures. And those interpretations are brought into games and movies a lot lately. And especially Benjamin Franklin is wildly depicted on one end of the spectrum. He's like one of the most intellectual people of the time, which is probably true. But on the other end of the spectrum, I know some children probably watch this show. We won't talk about that end of the spectrum.
And then you have like I don't know about you, but I did you grow up with the nostalgic kid cartoon Liberty's Kids?
Yes. It's,
Yeah. Then you have that version of all of them.
yeah, I my first like introduction to the American Revolution was Schoolhouse Rock, and I'm like, wow, the interpretation has changed a lot since then. And I have like a niece and nephew that I'm going to show these to at some point. I'm like, oh, this is so like fun and whimsical with all the songs and everything, and it's not accurate anymore. It's like horribly, wildly inaccurate, but it's
Yeah.
pretty.
But it's pretty and they sing fun songs.
I mean, that's why I study history and archaeology is for the songs.
I mean, that is the sole reason that I also get inspired from history and mythology. I mean, look at all the media we have with amazing music.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wanted to be alive during Les Mis during the time period that that went on. It was totally a great time in France. Everybody was happy.
Of course, I mean, you could water your flowers along the barricades with the other students.
Yeah, protesting in the street and storming the Bastille with my homies. That's exactly what I wanted to do growing up.
Yeah, and then you just sort of drink wine with Enrolas and the other students. Perfect.
Oh my God, now I'm having flashbacks of playing Assassin's Creed Unity and realizing how much I hated the French Revolution.
Yeah. I mean, look, I love the Assassin's Creed franchise because I swear there's a game in basically every kind of interesting time, almost every kind of interesting time period that you'd want to be able to go back and think about alternative histories or what, things you might have wanted to do. So, same like playing Syndicate, like the fact that there's a one DLC with Jack the Ripper, you're like, sure, why not? Let's do that.
Yeah, let's chase Jack the Ripper. That dude had it coming. If anybody in history had it coming.
Yeah, I mean, and then you can sort of ride on top of Victorian carriages, and it's all good. It's all good.
It's exactly how Charles Dickens depicted it.
Yes, I mean they hid all the paintings in history of real people doing that because it would make them look bad. But sure,
Yeah, yeah. 100% historical accuracy across the board. Everything that
Mhm.
gets produced now, 100% historically accurate. As an archaeologist, I can guarantee that.
I was gonna say. I mean, yeah. Hopefully, you can confirm that for all the other archaeologists. I do
Yeah,
not feel
so all of you
qualified to say
can
that.
all of you can stop your research. Everything that's been published up until now, 100% accurate.
Yeah, exactly. See, amazing.
Oh my God, I'm gonna get such feedback on this episode.
Well, that's what we do love. Hey, this is what games are for. You give people a starting point to extrapolate on your most wild dreams and ideas, and then they say, "Yeah, take that and run."
Sorry. So we're getting pretty close to being out of time. Lexi, if people wanted to learn more about Archaeogaming, or if they wanted to like look at a video game from an archaeology standpoint, or just study Archaeogaming, what would you recommend for them?
Well, there are so many different ways you could go about that. I would say, I think even now in 2026, it's a small but steadily growing but still small subfield. I think we still encounter a lot of sort of skepticism from traditional scholars because they're like, oh, the gaming thing, no, not so I would say definitely Andrew Reinhardt's book is kind of like a great just step to sort of orient yourself and find your way into the subject. But then I think that there are so many great scholars who are just publishing all over. So whether it's in I think most Archaeogaming stuff comes out in journals because for such a sort of timely, relevant discipline or subdiscipline, I should say, um, books are not, they're just like anything in academia, they're slower. But there's a very good series of books you can get into. So there is the Imagines series, which I believe is through Bloomsbury, I want to say. So we've got Christian Rollinger's 2020, I believe, volume on sort of video games and antiquity. And then I know we have Ross Clare's monograph, which came out a couple years ago on I think it's like transmedia antiquity in video games. We have a couple volumes that are edited by Jane Draycott. Kate Cook has written a lot on video game stuff. Alexander Vandewala, of course, is a big publishing name. He's published a lot, and I want to say the Games and Culture Journal, but other journals as well. And then if you're just interested in the technical aspects, I highly recommend looking at the Games and Simulation Journal or the International Journal of Game Studies, which are both available online. So yeah, and then of course you can get involved. There's DIGRA, which is the sort of big international association. It's an acronym. I always forget. I think it's like the Digital something Games Association. I can't remember at this point. But just Google DIGRA and it'll take you right to their website because they're always publishing things. And then there's usually an annual conference or two. So there's a lot of ways to sort of get in. And then I would say, in terms of video games, I mean, picking up historical or mythological games obviously are a start. Just look for what you can, see if there's anything that interests you. Um, I'm going to, shamelessly plug my own nonprofit work with the Osmandius Project. I have worked to create several Archaeogaming videos. Most of them are geared for young children because I would like to put them into schools. But I do have at least one or two videos that are geared more for a collegiate audience, I would say. So anyone can make an Archaeogame video if you want. Just pick up a game, write out a script, record it, say some things. Um, Sadly, in the U.S., there really isn't like a built foundation or network of Archaeogaming people. It's really kind of a collection of individuals spread out around universities. In Europe, several universities in the UK have like dedicated digital gaming labs. So they have people working on stuff. So right now I'm based at the University of Bristol and we have a digital gaming lab. So we do a lot of Archaeogaming and historical gaming stuff. And then there are a few places around mainland Europe that are quite strong in game studies as well. And if you're more on the gaming side than the history side, but still kind of in that realm, I would say Finland is actually the top hub in the world for the pure gaming side. So if you want to get into coding and stuff like that for historical games, they do some really great work, especially at the university in Tampere, and then I think followed by Helsinki. So yeah, there's a lot out there. Just kind of start somewhere and you can't go wrong.
Yeah, everybody has to start somewhere, and that is what this program is all about, giving you a starting point so you aren't just aimlessly wandering. As fun as that is, it's kind of dangerous. Don't just aimlessly wander. You end up in traffic or something. It's not great. Don't end up in traffic. Please don't do that. That's my PSA for this episode. Please don't walk into traffic.
Very good one. Very good one.
I like to think so. I like to think this show is a public service. Well, Lexi, thank you so much for joining me on this super professional episode on behalf of myself. Uh,
No worries. Yeah, no, it's been a real pleasure. I always love to talk about Archaeogaming, historical game studies, my research, all this stuff. So, it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I'm glad that people like yourself are providing a platform for us to get the word out to more people because we do desperately need more people to enter this world.
yeah, so students, if you're looking for something like a new, something that's up and coming in archaeology, there is a lot of room to include yourself in Archaeogaming. This is I want to say it's a fairly recent concept, but that's just my personal opinion. It could be older than I'm leading it on to be.
No, I mean, truly, the first time the term archaeogaming was even invented was 2013, which I guess to me doesn't seem like a very long time ago, considering that's literally the year I graduated high school. So, before that, there was nothing for me. So, I think we're doing a lot better now. A lot more people are just kind of getting the word out, and more people are kind of coming to the realization that like this is a legitimate thing you can study. But yeah, I mean, look, we're always up against kind of the machine that tells us, oh, games are not educational, they're not important. Why do you want to study that? I mean, unlike the ancient world on screen, sort of in traditional TV film, we don't have a long, illustrious, at least 50-year history of this being studied. Andrew coined the term in 2013, and I will say that even though people were working on it, just from what I've noticed, I would say it was really more like 2018 or 19 that a lot of the literature we have now kind of either started or burst onto the scene. So, I mean, that Rolling Your volume in 2020, I think, was one of the very first books we actually really had that did an in-depth exploration. So, no, it's really new. It's really new. It's growing. But like anything, especially with digital media, it is changing very quickly. So nothing stays relevant for long, I would say, sadly.
Yeah, and that is, well, the best thing is, and I know I need to wrap this up, but things do go in cycles. Like pop culture, especially, is a cycle. Like people will do remakes of video games that are like 30 years old, and I'm like, okay, this is a fire take on a classic, but also I'm a huge nerd, so
Everything comes around again at some
yeah,
point.
yeah. Well, Lexi, again, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciated it. This was a really great episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for inviting me on. And, I hope that people will take away something pretty useful other than a fun soundbite or two from this episode.
It's the traffic PSA that they'll take away.
Of course. Of course.
All right. Thanks everybody for watching the episode and stay tuned for more.